Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on VMware disaster recovery and ransomware recovery opportunity for VMware partners. My name is Satya Shrestha, a senior staff multi-cloud solutions architect here at VMware. And today I'm joined by Stephen Porter, who is a staff cloud solution strategist at VMware. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thank you.
Steve, if you could briefly introduce yourself and let our viewers know what we'll be exactly covering today in today's session, that would be really great.
Thank you. So I'm Stephen Porter. I'm a cloud solution strategist for VMware, which is a very grand title for saying that I help our partners. Many partners only know VMware for the virtualization technologies. So I spend time with our partners, helping them look at the broader portfolio and how to utilize that to grow their business, taking their experience, their expertise, and linking that with the VMware technologies to create new services that they can take to their customers. I've historically worked for service providers, so I've been on the other side of the fence, and I've understood how to create and monetize services and take those to market. So really, that's the experience that we're hoping to get across to you in today's session. Mm-hmm. We'll be looking at the technologies that are important in this topic, disaster recovery, and how to elevate that into a ransomware recovery discussion, but also the kind of services that you can create on the back end and how you can create revenue from existing customers or ideally new customers.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. So if you can show us what we'll be exactly covering on the agenda, that would be awesome.
But as far as the agenda, we'll be looking at the market dynamics, what's actually changed in this conversation. We'll be looking at NIST and how NIST reviews the ransomware recovery situation. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go in and start looking at the solutions from VMware and then how to take that to customers and the value that the VMware solutions bring to you as a partner and how those can be used to create new services.
Right. So we'll be covering what we have from VMware in terms of technology and how that technology can be used by our partners, right? For creating the services that they can sell to their customers. That sounds really great.
So if we start off with the market dynamics, if I said disaster recovery to you, a lot of people would think about traditional situations, fires, cyclones, diggers pulling up the fiber cable to the data center. Mm-hmm. And that's the reality for many years. And what we were doing in that time is that we were protecting against a physical problem. Mm-hmm. And in that time, IT was a back office function. It was supporting the business, providing financial services, providing order management. But the reality these days is that ransomware is the number one cause of disasters. Mm-hmm. So one of the other things that has changed and why ransomware is so significant is that IT is now the business. If you think about all of your interactions with organizations that you work with, you look at your bank account on your phone, you look at your mobile phone bill on a website, you order from Amazon. Mm-hmm. Everybody now is driven by the technology, and therefore anything that impacts the technology and the technology's availability has a significant impact on the business. If I think about one here in the UK that happened recently, our health service has a online system called NHS 111, mm-hmm. guided by AI and a very interactive process where you call up, describe your medical conditions, and the technology guides the call respondent as to how to guide you and help you find the right resources. They were hit by ransomware, and they went from artificial intelligence and a guided system to paper and pencil. Wow. It actually had a significant impact on patients.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I would imagine that. I mean, the disruption that it causes to the business, its customers, is massive, right? And that's the opposite issue. And also the money involved there, the amount of revenue they may lose, the goodwill that they will lose, all of that thing, right? And I also think that many businesses, even if sometimes they may be attacked by ransomware, they don't go public. So many of these ransomware cases we may never know, right?
Yes. So, to give you a flavor of how significant it is, I've highlighted some of the European examples here. And you can see that it impacts the business quite dramatically, either from taking the business down and it not being able to operate to actually costing a lot of money. So, there's a lot of situations where people are thinking that ransomware will attack somebody else. It won't be them. But the reality is that more and more, it's becoming highly likely that they could become the victim of a ransomware attack.
So these are all the examples of ransomware attack that has come in the light in the news and different places, right?
Yeah, so those are European ones. I've got ones for North America and for Asia as well. But virtually every time you look at the news or you look in the press, there will be an instance of somebody being impacted by a ransomware attack.
Yeah, I personally know like few of the Australian companies, they have been actually attacked with ransomware, and then the goodwill that tarnished, the reputation that was on the line, and like I said earlier, the revenue, and then the impact to the customers was really bad. So yes, it is a really worldwide issue at the moment that businesses are constantly being attacked by ransomware.
Yeah, and it's a situation that won't change. We're all talking about artificial intelligence and particularly generative AI. Generative AI is very positive in one respect, but in the hands of a hacker, in the hands of an attacker, it's actually a tool that can help them become much more sophisticated in the way that they attack and the scale of an attack.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we think about it from the other side, if I said ransomware, to you as a customer, to you as an individual, most people would tend to think about protection. How can we stop ransomware? How can we prevent ransomware from getting into our organization? And it's certainly a situation that we need to consider. We need to think about our investments in that space. But as we've highlighted, ransomware is everywhere. So, it's highly likely that you will be attacked. And therefore, the situation is that as well as the protection, we need to think about the recovery. How can we get those systems back? And there are statistics that show if somebody doesn't get their data back effectively, then they can go out of business very quickly.
Yeah.
So, for you as partners, there are a number of opportunities. You can provide those managed security services if you have the skills, but those are quite expensive skills, and it's a good business opportunity. But in parallel, you can be looking at disaster recovery or ideally ransomware recovery. So you might have disaster recovery platforms already, and we can extend those and provide that additional capability around ransomware protection.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the service that they can actually start offering to their customers, right? Manage the ransomware recovery through our VMware services. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the key things that powers both the protection and the recovery service is the VMware technology Carbon Black. For many years, security has been about antivirus. It's been about knowing where a problem is, having a signature or some sort of resolution, and being able to look for that problem and then use the signature to resolve it.
Yeah.
And that's worked for many years. But what Carbon Black and a number of other vendors did when they came to market was they changed the dynamic. With Carbon Black, it's all about looking for behavior. How are things happening on your server, on your laptop? And one of the key things about that is ransomware is all about interacting with the user and getting the user to do something that seems normal, but actually may be malicious. Opening a spreadsheet, opening a Word document can introduce a script that actually creates problems.
Right. So Carbon Black here is basically doing the real-time analysis of what's happening there and then protecting our customers on the get-go, right, as the things happen.
Yeah. Traditional security and Carbon Black provides that same kind of traffic light system of alerts and severities. But one of the key differences is that we show you the workflow. With ransomware, it can sit inside a customer's environment for many weeks or indeed many months. Analysts have identified that it's now taking, or it can be up to 9 months, where ransomware can be present inside an organization before it actually gets triggered. And so what we need to be able to do is to recognize the activities that are happening and how they interconnect so that we can identify when something looks wrong. If you looked at, somebody opening an email, classic behavior. Opening a Word document, classic behavior.
Yep.
But if that Word document suddenly starts driving a PowerShell or driving a script, that could be malicious. If that script suddenly starts looking for IP addresses of all of the servers, that's definitely malicious. And therefore, you want to be able to react to that and identify where it came from and what it's trying to do.
Yeah. So the fact that you said that ransomware, it stays there inactive for 9 months before it does anything is very surprising, right? I mean, for 9 months it does nothing, and then as it collects all the data, everything, then it starts its action. That is very, very surprising.
So, this technology can be used both as a preventative capability in trying to stop attacks, but as you'll see later on, it can also be a valuable part of a ransomware recovery. We want to identify the thing that we're trying to recover from. Has it been compromised? Is there malware, or is there a ransomware capability already in that VM that we're trying to recover?
Got it.
So, key themes when we're talking to customers, ransomware is becoming much more prevalent. And, you can see this statistic there, 60% of organizations have been hit within the last 12 months. And as you said earlier on, they may talk about it, or they may just kind of brush it under the cover and not talk about it. A common kind of misconception is that if I pay for the ransomware recovery, so I actually pay the ransomware, I'll get my data back. And in many instances, customers don't actually get their data back. They'll either not get their data back because the attacker had no intention of actually providing those keys and giving them back. Or a more common situation is that the security business is so good, it's actually taken down the attacker, and therefore, those keys aren't available anymore because the attacker has been taken out of the market. So, that's a big challenge.
Right.
But you can see here, and certainly, my experience in operations when I used to do disaster recoveries for the organization I worked for, is it's very hard to recover. If you're recovering from a tape, if you're recovering from a plan that's not been well defined, then it can take much longer to get the system back up and running. And that's a big problem if your company is so reliant on IT.
Yeah, absolutely. The third point here is saying that it takes 16 days in average to recover, and that 16 days is downtime for the business, right? So that's a massive amount of time. And also, like you said, in many cases, they may not have done the drill of disaster recovery, and sometimes that can even blow up, right? It just doesn't work at all. Yeah.
So, when you go and talk to organizations about a DR plan, many organizations will almost kind of deliver a tick box exercise. They will say, yes, we've got a plan, and it's over there in the folder, or it's in this spreadsheet on this server, and they won't really nurture it. They won't keep it active and alive. So, disaster recovery is complex. It involves people, it involves technology, and it involves timing. If you don't bring the right pieces back at the right time, then it won't be effective. Classic for that is you bring back the website, but you don't bring back the payment platform. If you can't take the payment, there's no point having the website. So that's a big challenge. The amount of data, we talk now about artificial intelligence, we talk about IoT, the Internet of Things. Volumes of data is growing quite dramatically as customers try and get closer to their end users and their consumers and capture more data. But the more worrying thing is outside of the banks or the airlines, people don't test DR. They don't exercise it to make sure that it's going to work. And therefore, it has a big issue for them.
Yeah, I've seen that in many environments where they do have a DR system, but the last time they tested about 2 years ago, right? That I have seen firsthand as well.
Where I can always remember when I was in operations and we used to do disaster testing, they would declare a disaster for 4 weeks' time so that we could plan how we were going to do the disaster recovery and try and make sure that everything would work. But even then, very rarely did we get the systems back up and running quickly.
Exactly.
So, disaster recovery as a topic is driven by RTO and RPO. How much data am I willing to lose? How much time am I willing to lose? And, you as professionals know exactly what that's about. So the main reason I put this slide in is that for many customers, they don't go and test their DR plan. They don't evaluate it. So for many organizations, their plan is actually stale. One of the customers I worked with, we went and we were talking to them about disaster recovery because their disaster recovery provider had stopped providing that service. And when we looked at their DR plan, they had written the contract 5 years ago and nobody had reviewed it in 5 years.
Wow.
The SLA in the plan was 48 hours to recover the IT systems. The business had moved from paper-based electronic trading to 24/7 electronic trading of credits. So, the requirement for data for the systems to be back up and running was completely different to when that original contract had been written. So for you as partners, this is a great opportunity to go and talk to a customer and challenge what their DR plan is.
Yep.
So, help them reevaluate it and then look if it is relevant for ransomware recovery, because in many instances it won't be.
That perfectly makes sense. Yes.
For you as partners as well, it's a revenue opportunity. A lot of customers, if they're not a large enterprise or a strategic account, they won't have a dedicated team. It'll be on the system administrator's to-do list, and it'll be number 5 or number 6. They won't be focused on it. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, they're looking for you as a partner to step in with the skills, with the focus, with that external view, mm-hmm. to help them make sure that the plan is relevant, that the plan's going to work, and that when the time comes that you can help them get the systems back up and running. So, 16 million is a great opportunity, and therefore, gives you a lot of potential to grow your business. Mm-hmm. The other thing that, in working with the partners around this topic is many partners already have other solutions. They work with different vendors or cloud-based services. Mm-hmm. Instead of having that, DR system, backup system, and polar opposites, if you can create an environment where you've got tiered services, so instead of having that, the important servers are in the DR, the less important servers are in the backup.
Yep.
If you have a blended solution where you can commercially make it attractive to cover all of the servers, then that's one of the ways that you can increase your revenue. Mm-hmm. Or the other opportunity is to treat ransomware recovery as a separate service. Right. DR classically is production and DR. And if ransomware attacks, it gets into the production environment and across to the DR environment. So you need a third insurance policy, and that's really where you can create this additional service.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? It's like a upselling of their services. Again, customizing it depending on customer's workload. If it's this dev kind of workload, could be just like a backup there, only just offering them backups. And if it's really production, mission critical kind of workloads and services, then yeah, they can tier it with DR as well as ransomware recovery. Yeah, that perfectly makes sense.
Yeah. So VMware has a number of solutions in this space, and part of what we will do as a team is to guide you as to the most appropriate solution for the problem that you're trying to fix. In this case, we're looking at a cloud-based service. We're looking at VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery. Mm-hmm. And you can see here we've highlighted 2 opportunities. Yep. If a customer is not really ready to invest in ransomware and they're still of the mind that it's something that's going to happen to somebody else, then we can focus on disaster recovery, get that first step, the platform in place to really help them get out of a problem if something negative happens in their environment. Mm-hmm. And what we'll be talking about is significantly different perhaps to the DR service that they have at the moment.
Yes.
But really where we should be trying to guide them is into thinking about ransomware recovery. Mm-hmm. It's an incremental opportunity, but it means then that we have the scale and the granularity to identify when the ransomware came in, where we need to recover from, mm-hmm. and to recover quickly and get those IT systems back up and running.
Yep, and with the RPOs and RTOs that we were talking about earlier in mind, right? So just match what they had. Yep.
So we're going to be in for the rest of the session focusing on ransomware recovery, mm-hmm. and how you can provide these incremental services. So if I build out this this graphic, what you can see with Cloud Disaster Recovery is that we are offering some significantly different capabilities. So with Cloud Disaster Recovery, it's a SaaS service. It's a service being provided by VMware, mm-hmm. where you as a partner don't have to build platforms. You don't have to build different capabilities. You can take the service from us, but it means then that you can be up and running very quickly. So we've seen partners who can turn this on within a matter of days and get that service working for a customer. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be connecting to the production environment that the customer has. And that can either be in the customer's data center, or if you as a partner are a hosting partner, then it can be connecting to the customer's environment in your data center. And then we're going to be copying that data up into a scale-out file system. Mm-hmm. So we're keeping those VMs as VMs. We're not changing it into a backup format. We're not changing the structure of them. We're creating an environment where we keep those VMs, but it's now being hosted in a cloud environment. So commercially, it comes down in price. Mm-hmm. And then when we invoke a disaster, we can rebuild that environment dynamically.
Yep.
So here you've got a number of options.
Mm-hmm.
We can have no infrastructure present. And when a disaster happens, we take that file system and we dynamically build the SDDC. We dynamically build the data center from scratch, reading directly from the file system.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a pilot light. So we can have some of the key servers running.
Yep.
So we are paying for a limited amount of compute.
Mm-hmm.
But it means then that instead of taking hours or multiple hours, it can take a couple of hours to get the system back up and running.
Yep.
Or indeed, you can have the whole environment running all of the time and have that 15-minute recovery instead of hours of recovery time.
Yeah, so the choice and flexibility is there for our customer partners. Like you said, they can have on demand. When disaster happens, the SSD spins up automatically on demand, which is a little bit of heavy lifting, but it saves some money there, right? But if it's pilot light, they can start with 2 hosts and run it there with critical workloads. And as the disaster happens, they can scale up that STDC because it's in cloud. They can have from 2 to 5 to 10 really easily, right? So it really helps with the budget. It helps with the objective that customers or partners have. Yeah.
And commercially, we can be significantly cheaper than then running a data center as a DR environment, significantly cheaper than them working with another provider who might have to have a physical data center.
Yes.
And then, from a RTO, RPO objective, we can be much more granular about matching their available budget with the kind of service that we can offer.
Exactly. And the good thing about this being on cloud is the reasonable availability, right? If the customer wants to have this DR, let's say, the primary site being in Australia and they want to have DR in Singapore or Japan, wherever they want, wherever our VMware Cloud AWS is, they can spin up those DR sites, right? So that's another beauty of having this on cloud.
And you can see I built the slide out there because, one of the other significant things with VCDR is that we can create thousands of snap points. So if we think about that ransomware situation, where it can be present from days to many months, what we need is that granularity to be able to identify the day, the hour that ransomware came into the environment. So we need that granularity of thousands of snap points.
Yes.
But also what we can do on the recovery side is to create a isolated recovery environment.
Right.
What we want to be able to do is to test whether the ransomware is still present.
Yeah.
And by isolating it from a network perspective, we can see what's happening inside the VM. We can open up the network and see what it tries to do, whether it tries to talk out to a command and control server, or we can see whether it tries to navigate and find other VMs. So it creates an environment where we can make sure that we're very specific about where we're recovering from and then test what's going to happen when we try and put it back into production.
This is really good, yeah.
And then when we do the recovery, you've got a number of situations where you can either stay running in the public cloud in AWS, or you can restore back into a Microsoft Azure environment, or restore back all the way to the customer's data center if they recover the hardware and they're able to take those VMs back into their physical data center. So again, you as a partner have options. So, what makes VCDR ideal for ransomware recovery? And really, it's these kind of key items. One is offsite backups. That ability to have not a synchronous connection between prod and DR, which means that often the ransomware will be propagated. It's an asynchronous connection. So we can make sure we've got that environment that's isolated that we can recover from. We provide immutable snapshots. You're not going to be able to write any changes into this environment. So you've got that data integrity capability. I mentioned thousands of recovery points. Potentially, your physical data center may have situations in it where things are at different versions and different levels. If we're creating the data center from scratch, then it's a clean build, it's a new environment. So there's a lot of value that we can bring. But the most important thing is that it's automated. So you as a partner can have some of that integration, that gluing of pieces together taken away from you because we've done that work for you. And we can provide that environment where we guide you through recovery. So you can do a production recovery, or you can do a test one where you're providing that simulation to make sure that when it does recover, you can recover in the appropriate amount of time, hours or minutes.
Yes, the good thing about VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery, as you have mentioned here, automated recovery, right? We can actually have the whole run book just there and say, hey, okay, so step 1 do this, step 3 do this, right? If you have, let's say, 3-tier web app and DB kind of environment, you can say, okay, bring up DB first, then app second, and then web the last, right? So you can have that kind of orchestration built into this. And this is really good for enterprise-grade and disaster recovery service like this. And all automated, which is great.
Yeah. So if we look at the example now, introducing the ransomware. So, if ransomware were to hit a customer's environment, the VMs are being stored in the service in storage. We're able to protect that environment. And what we're going to do, as we've just highlighted, is to run a recovery workflow. So what we're able to do is to test and make sure that the VM that we're going to recover from is clean. You're going to inject carbon black, check the behavior of the VM and make sure that there's nothing malicious in there. We're going to open up the network and see if it talks to a command and control server or if it tries to do other things in the internal network before we start recovering. We're going to find the right recovery points. With thousands of snaps available to us, we can check, and I've got a screenshot in a second, we can check where we need to recover from and make sure that we're able to choose the point where we lose the minimum amount of data, but we're able to recover quickly. I mentioned that behavioral analysis, and that's really where we're using that carbon black technology that I mentioned earlier on.
Right.
So, to give you a flavor from the screenshots, this is showing you all of the snaps that are available. And you can see we can be very granular in the hours within a day that we're going to try and recover from. We can see the activity on that storage. So we can identify if somebody is trying to encrypt the storage, because the activity will go up quite dramatically, and then we can identify the recovery point.
Right.
But you can see here the workflow is all of these different items are built into the software. It's going to be an automated process to go through these different steps with you as the partner guiding the customer through them. So here we're identifying the correct recovery point, and you can see this is when the activity came in, and we're going to determine whether we are willing to accept data loss and how much of the data we're willing to lose, or if we're less willing to accept the data loss, then there's potentially a higher risk that the ransomware is going to be present. So in that situation, this is where the testing comes into play. So if we are going to use that higher risk snapshot, then what we want to do is to scan it using the carbon black technology to see if there's anything malicious on the VM. If it's clean, then we'll allow the process to continue. So, really from a ransomware and disaster recovery perspective, all of these different items make powered by VMware a much better offer for you as a partner. So you've got, fully automated processes, the operational consistency of it being a VMware tool in the customer environment, in your data center, or up in the hyperscaler environment. Cloud economics in DR is really important. If you think about how expensive it is to run a DR data center, running that in the cloud and only paying for the compute and the storage when you need it means that we can bring the price point down. And then from a ransomware perspective, that isolation, that detection process, the behavioral analysis that we can do, and the automated end-to-end workflow is really important.
Yeah, so this is really a next generation disaster and recovery service with ransomware, and also the analytics you talked about around carbon black, even checking, where the ransomware infection happened and choosing the right snaps at the right point in time recovery backups, right, to recover it. So really, next generation DR and ransomware service, this one. Yeah.
So as a solution, it's very comprehensive, it's very powerful, but really for you as partners, there are a number of opportunities. So, earlier on I mentioned that the DR plan can get stale, that the focus within a customer is often not there. So, here are some different situations where a partner can get involved. Creating a plan. If I think back to my days, the DR plan was a bunch of paper in a lever arch file that we used to put in the safe.
Right.
Nobody ever goes to the safe and opens it. If you think about, modernizing that might be a spreadsheet that's on a file server. But if the file server is attacked by ransomware, you can't get access to it. So, there's a number of places where partners can play. Making sure that it's fit for purpose. Is it still relevant for what the business is doing? Or have they created new applications, new services that are no longer being protected? So that regular review of the plan, really important. Or even looking at the team. How many times have you gone to a customer site and there's a chair with a high-vis jacket, and when you ask why have you got the high vis? That's the first aider.
Yep.
But they've left the business. So, there's no longer somebody responsible for that particular task. So again, it's something that has to be kept up to date.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got these other scenarios where you can, replicate the workload if you need to move it to another site.
Mm-hmm.
You've got testing the applications. You mentioned testing applications earlier on. But, the other situation is to test the DR plan.
Yes.
And make sure that, if you're reliant on IT, that you can get that system back up and running in a matter of minutes or hours, instead of, the classic scenario right now with a DR or a ransomware recovery is that it could take weeks if you're restoring from tape and then rolling the databases forward.
Yeah.
So different places where you can play, creating the strategy, analyzing the environment, creating the recovery plans, and then doing this regular testing, managing and operating the process and managing that service.
And all of those components that you mentioned earlier in the earlier slide, all of this can be part of that DR service, and then all of this can be monetized, right? Individually.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can create a very basic service for a customer, or you can create a much stronger service. Yes. So if you think about, the fundamentals that we've been talking about, it's getting a system back up and running and meeting that SLA. And really for partners, there is a number of opportunities. They can manage the technology and have the customer responsible for the SLA. So the customer does the heavy lifting. The middle service can be the partner manages the technology and operates it in conjunction with the customer. So it's a shared SLA, or it can be completely managed by the partner. So the partner delivers a premium service, that gold standard, where they ensure the SLA. So they provide the technology, they operate it, they recover it, and get those applications back up and running.
Yeah, this is really good, highly customizable. Yep.
We mentioned DR testing. It's something that a bank would do, an airline would do, but many smaller customers don't. And now, because we've got that isolated environment, we can do it very regularly. We can use the hyperscaler, so AWS in this case, and test and make sure that we get that environment running and then shut it down. So we don't have the expense of a DR data center being there all the time. So, monetizing these opportunities means that, as we've just highlighted, there's a range of services that we can bring in. So a bronze service might be just providing the technology and allowing the customer consuming it. So, you as a partner manage the licenses, manage the life cycle, but it becomes the customer's responsibility. You could offer a silver service, manage DR, getting those systems back up and running and getting back into production. And that can be the silver service. But the premium service, where we talk about ransomware protection, is going to be that DR plus, and getting them back to the point where the applications are up and running. So you can offer these different types of service, and I've given kind of indicative costs here.
Yeah.
And then down at the bottom, working with VMware and taking advantage of our lifecycle incentives. So, from a monetization perspective, there's margin in the software, there's margin in the services that you're going to be offering to your customers, but there are also rebates and incentives from VMware, where as you grow that, you can see that, you can get, $4,000 for supporting the consulting and, architecting the service. So, there's other opportunities here for you as a partner. But you can see from a engagement perspective, a health check, a business review, as we talked about, checking whether they've got a stale DR plan. That can be a number of hours from you. So we used to do it as a one-day exercise where we would go in, do the analysis, and then give them a feedback report. So you've got business review, health check, matter of hours. Getting the service up and running with VCDR, that could be a couple of days. All the way through to architecting and testing the ransomware recovery, that could be a couple of weeks. So you've got a journey that you can take the customer on and offer consulting services or managed services at different points. So the kind of services you could create, bronze service, silver service, gold service, and then deciding on kind of where the customer commercially is and the kind of SLA that they're looking for, then you can determine who's responsible for that at SLA.
This is a very nice table with all the services for bronze tier, silver tier, gold tier, right? Our customers can just use it as is and just customize it that matches their needs. This is really neat.
And it can be a mix of consulting services or professional services and then managed services on top.
Exactly.
So, from a next steps perspective, my team, the team that we're both involved in, we can get engaged with a partner and help them look at what they do currently, the kind of services they offer, and then see how we can grow that opportunity. If they just want to look at the technology, then they can go to Partner University or the Tech Zone. Or if some of the partners that I've worked with have gone online and used the calculator. You can run a customer scenario through the calculator to see what the costs would be with VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery. So there's a number of opportunities there for you.
Exactly. Yeah, you can involve us through your business development manager or your partner manager, and we'll be happy to help you there.
So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and our contact details are here. Please engage. We are very happy to talk about this opportunity and see if we can help you get closer to your customers or to create more opportunity for you to work and bring customers to your business.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate your time today and really insightful session. Really appreciate it. And thanks to all of our viewers for your time today. We hope that you find this video insightful, and we look forward to seeing you again. Have a good one, and bye for now.